Everyone thought Chindu was a loser who was scared to even come to school, but the moment he sleeps, he fights countless waves of demons before they break his crystal of life. If he wins, he gets any SSS rank skills. Everywhere, explosions were happening. People were terrified, running around, as more and more trouble rains down from above, crashing directly into the ground. One of the crystals heads straight toward a guy who starts glowing with its aura, as the crystal slams itself directly into his heart. At Liang City No. 1 High School, an announcer is saying that students should already know that only by entering the Hongji class is there any hope of becoming an elite martial artist in the future. He says the placement exam simulates the college entrance exam and consists of a written academic test and a martial arts assessment. The total score is 750, with academic subjects totaling 225 and the martial exam totaling 525. He says he hopes everyone applies what they have learned and answers carefully. The announcer then says that only the top 10 students in total score can enter the Hongji class. He says the academic exam will begin shortly and asks everyone to enter the exam hall in an orderly manner. One of the students is thinking that this is a chance to become a martial artist. He thinks about how he suddenly fell into a coma during his first year of high school and how his parents, worried about his health, applied for 2 years of medical leave for him. He believes this is likely his last chance to become a martial artist and that he must seize it. As he moves forward, he sees a group of people. One of them says that it isn't that Chindu, and that he actually came to take the exam. He says look at that, and claims he told everyone that anyone has a shot at the Hongji class. Chun-Du took 2 years of leave in his first year, yet he still dares to come for the exam. Young people really have an edge to them. He gets sick, takes 2 years off, and then dares to come straight for the Hongji class exam. He says Chun-Du doesn't actually think he's some kind of genius, does he? Chun-Du grabs the guy's hand tightly and says thanks for the concern, but tells him he should focus on how he's going to pass the upcoming exam instead. Then he releases the guy's hand and starts leaving the area. Another guy, after seeing this, says that this kid was obviously someone who got bullied back in first year and asks why he's so arrogant now. He suggests that after the exam, they should give him something special. However, the other guy, whose hand was grabbed, thinks to himself that this kid's grip strength might be a bit too high. Another one says that he's brainless and that if they start something now and get caught, they might get disqualified. He says it's better to wait until the martial arts exam later to make a move. Then, with a really angry face, he says that if he accidentally cripples him during the exam, no one will be able to say a thing about it. Meanwhile, Chindu is thanking him as he looks at the question asking him to briefly describe the current world background and the initial day of the High Martial Calendar. He reads that it starts right off with common knowledge questions. Old Era Year 2842, an otherworld civilization was discovered and invaded Earth. Humanity retaliated with nuclear weapons. 2 years later, there was total nuclear defeat and the death toll exceeded 5 billion. Under global nuclear radiation, humans broke through their physical limiters and began to evolve. On August 27th, Old Era Year 2860, the life intensity of all adults reached level 2. That day marked the end of the Old Era and the beginning of the New Era, known as the initial day of the High Martial Calendar. Question 2 asks about important figures who made huge contributions during the High Martial Era's initial war. Question 3 asks what incorrect policies various countries proposed regarding the restoration of world order. Question 4, and so on. After finishing everything, he submits the exam and leans back, thinking that, as expected, he got full marks. He then thinks that, after all, he wasn't actually in a coma for 2 years. Instead, due to an inexplicable injury, he repeatedly entered a strange space. He thinks about how the rewards from that space helped awaken his mental power and granted him a photographic memory. That is exactly why, despite being suspended from school for 2 years, he still had the confidence to register for the exam. Unfortunately, even a perfect score in academics is only 225 points. So he still needs to go home and properly prepare for the martial arts exam. At home, Chindu says that he's back. His dad says it's perfect timing and tells him to get ready to eat. As Chindu walks, some kind of card falls out of his pocket. Suddenly, his mother notices it on the ground and tells him to look at himself for being so clumsy and reminds him to make sure he doesn't lose his exam admission ticket. Later, they all have a nice dinner. But then suddenly, someone says to look at this and asks what it is. Suddenly, Chengdu says that it's key blood powder and asks his dad where it came from. His dad says that since he's about to take the exam for the Hongji class, he bought some key blood powder to help boost his score. Chengdu then says that he can actually pass without this stuff. His dad tells him not to spend all day over overthinking things. He says that even though he himself can't be a martial artist, whether it's Chin-do or his sister, the family can more than afford to support a few martial artists. He says to eat what needs to be eaten and drink what needs to be drunk, and that there's always a way to get money. After hearing this, Chin-do says Then he thinks that a bottle of key blood powder costs 20,000, and buying this probably drained the family's savings. He thinks that in today's society, if you don't become a martial artist, you can't even guarantee your family's safety. As he continues to meditate, he thinks further that whether tomorrow's exam goes smoothly depends entirely on tonight. As Chun-do continues meditating, he soon finds himself in a strange place. A sword is there, which he immediately grabs, and then a large number of monsters start appearing. He then thinks that ever since that coma, he enters this crystal space every day after falling asleep. There are many monsters in this space, and their goal is to destroy the crystal. He must fight the monsters to protect it. If the crystal is destroyed, he falls into a coma for the entire next day. But if he dies in battle inside the space while protecting the crystal, he wakes up quickly and feels full of energy all day. He thinks that at first, he was afraid to put his life on the line, which caused him to constantly fall into comas. It only got better after he figured out the rule that dying leads to abundant energy. As he keeps fighting more and more monsters and taking them down, he thinks further that there are benefits as well. Every time he successfully defends against a wave of monsters, his mental power rises a little. The increase in mental power has made his memory and comprehension abilities ridiculously strong. Even after stopping school for 2 years, he can still do a lot. Soon, notifications start popping up, saying that the next wave of monsters will arrive in 30 seconds. Keeps happening as Chun-do continues taking them down. Then the notification says that the only pity is that only the first successful defense of the crystal is effective. As Chun-do takes down even more monsters with his sword, he says to open the panel. When the panel appears, he thinks that his current stats are probably not enough to enter the Hongji class and become an elite martial artist in the future. The stats show his name as Chun-do. His life intensity is level 5.1. His mental power is level 5. His lifting strength is 1000 gene. His speed is 20 meters per second. His martial skill is flowing light sword art tier 1 at 89%. The waves defended show 4 out of 5 incomplete, 4 out of 10 incomplete, 4 out of 15 incomplete, 4 out of 20 incomplete, 4 out of 25 incomplete, 4 out of 30 incomplete, and 4 out of 35 incomplete. Then the notification says that the 5th wave of monsters is coming and tells the player to be prepared. As more monsters arrive, breathing fire, Chun-do says that here it comes and prepares to fight back against the flames. He thinks about fire breath as he braces himself. As he continues fighting, he notices a claw tear and tries to attack the claw with his sword. Then he faces a tail whip and jumps to dodge it as well. In his mind, he thinks that after experiencing so many deaths, he can finally master the monitor lizard's attack patterns and rhythm. As he keeps fighting, a really powerful strike lands on the monster and it starts falling. Then Chun-do thinks that it went berserk. He feels a bit hurt and then thinks that he got careless, but luckily he wasn't seriously injured. However, the monster prepares its claws to attack once again. Chun-do rushes forward, repeatedly telling himself to calm down and thinking that this time he will definitely win. However, as he closes the gap with the monster, he jumps and, using his aura, goes straight toward the monster's wide-open mouth. The monster itself thinks that it can take this guy straight into its mouth. However, before the jaws can close, Chun-do swiftly flips backward. This time, he sees something else coming his way, and it's a stream of fire breath. However, he manages to dodge it once again. As he does, he thinks that having a small body has its advantages, and for example, he can move faster and react more easily. Then he sends his sword flying forward. As the sword travels straight toward the dragon, it lets out a scream. Chun-do then says agility as he grabs his sword back. Drums and gongs seem to beat loudly in his mind as he finishes the dragon off with a huge beam released from his sword attack. He keeps slicing the dragon again and again. Once the dragon is finally down, he stands triumphantly on it as notifications start popping up. The notifications say congratulations to the host for successfully defending against 5 waves of monster attacks, and that his mental power level has increased by 1. They also say congratulations to the host for completing 5 out of 5 defensive waves, and that he has obtained the Void Immortal Visualization method. After seeing this, Chun-do thinks that there isn't much to say about the mental power increase, but a visualization method is different. He remembers that the school once explained that a visualization method is a rare technique that allows one to actively cultivate mental power. He thinks that although he can increase his mental mental power level through system rewards, the more of these good things, the better. Then the notification says that the host should prepare because the next wave of monsters is coming soon. After seeing this notification, Chun-Do immediately looks ahead and sees a large group of shadowy figures coming straight toward him. He thinks that their life intensity is one level higher than his and that there are a full 30 of them. He realizes that it seems he won't be able to pass this level anytime soon. So he stops meditating and thinks that he should forget it for now and take a look at the visualization method first. He then starts reading a virtual book, and what he sees shocks him. Once again, he finds himself in a new kind of area where a huge shadowy figure is smiling and watching over him. Now, Chun-Do thinks that that's how it is, and no wonder it's called a visualization method. He thinks that as long as he gazes at the giant, it will put him through a trial. He continues meditating, and soon aura starts pouring out of his body. At that moment, a lady comes in and says that it's time to eat. He immediately wakes up and starts getting ready. The lady then says that he seems a bit handsome now. He walks over and taps her head, saying that wasn't her brother handsome before. She immediately says that he was handsome and tells him to stop rubbing her head because he's messing up her hair. He just smiles and teases her back as they continue getting ready for dinner. It's clear that they have a close and playful relationship. She then asks again whether her brother was that handsome before. Chun-Do wonders to himself that he seems a bit different from before and thinks it might be the effect of the void immortal visualization method. Later, after finishing the food, he says to his dad and little fish that he's heading to the exam. They tell him to be careful on the way. At Liang City number 1 high school gymnasium, Chun-Do is practicing. He thinks that the void immortal visualization method is quite effective and that he can clearly feel improvements in all aspects of his body. At that moment, a voice comes from behind him and says that this isn't their genius student Chun-Do, who suspended his studies for 2 years. It's that moron again, along with his gang. He says that Chun-Do was dead last before suspending, yet after 2 years out of school, he still dares to come for the Hongji class assessment. He sarcastically asks whether the great philanthropist is here to help secure the bottom rank. Chun-Do responds that it's still better than someone who didn't even pass the academic lessons. The group's leader becomes furious and tells Chun-Do not to push his luck. Chun-Do replies that he didn't name names and that they shouldn't take it personally if it doesn't apply. Another guy steps in and says that's enough and that the assessment is what really matters. He warns that if something actually happens and a teacher shows up, the loss would outweigh the gain. The group starts leaving, but their leader turns back and tells Chun-Do to just wait, saying he'll get what's coming to him soon. Just as Chun-Do is about to move forward, a friend comes over and tells him that he's done for. Then Chun-Do says that it's fine and that he'll deal with whatever comes his way. His friend says that this isn't just about dealing with things as they come, and that Chun-Do wouldn't know because he's been suspended for 2 years. The friend then points toward them and says that kid, Fong Rue, is so rampant because his second uncle is now the school's dean of students. He says it's rumored that the dean of students has already leaked the questions to Fong Rue for this year's martial arts assessment. After hearing this, Chun-Do thinks that it looks like he has to watch out for Fong Rue conspiring with the teachers to trip him up. Soon after, the martial arts assessment is announced to be divided into a strength test and a combat duel. A voice says that candidates should group into tens according to their exam number order, enter the corresponding exam area, and prioritize the strength test. The friend tells Chun-Do that the exam is about to start and says not to think too much and just line up. At the same time, he thinks to himself that Chun-Do is really carefree. As they move forward, they stop in front of a giant big cat. A voice announces that this exam uses a last place elimination system and asks everyone to try the sandbag with full force, warning that those with low values will be eliminated. The friend says that they have to strike the sandbag simultaneously and that the last place in each group will be directly eliminated. He complains that this year's strength test mechanism is too perverted. Chun-Do thinks that there is still the combat duel coming up, so he should prioritize properly reserving his strength. As he steps forward, he thinks that he should win with speed. As he prepares his fist, someone nearby suddenly laughs and says that this is a piece of cake and that he has plenty of strength. Then the first group's assessment begins. Everyone starts punching the sandbag with all their strength and the big cat begins crying out. The crowd starts cheering, saying that the boss is awesome and that Fong Rue is indeed too strong. Another voice says that they heard Fong Rue's current strength has almost reached 1,400 gene. Someone else says that their boss is first place and that someone is probably going to be eliminated in this round. However, suddenly, everyone is shocked when the big cat suffers even more serious damage the next moment. A voice exclaims in disbelief wondering what's going on, saying that it's a 1,500 gene punching force produced with only level 5.1 life intensity. The voice questions which class this Chengdu is from, asks if he's really that amazing, and wonders why his name wasn't in the top 50 of the grade last year. The friend starts shouting excitedly that this is exactly what he expected from his brother. However, in his heart, he also thinks in shock that this is insane, and wonders since when his brother became this amazing. Chandu thinks that a life intensity of level 5.1 should correspond to a punching force of around 1,000 gene, yet Chandu struck with 1,500 gene of force. He thinks that no one in the Hongji class could do that. He wonders whether there is really such a formidable student in the regular class, and whether Chengdu's martial skill could be something special. He then says to show him Chengdu's file. The secretary immediately hands it over, and he starts reading. He thinks that a student from the regular class who took a 2-year suspension actually reached tier 1 with 55% mastery in martial skill. He then thinks that no, perhaps it's even higher now. The scene shifts to Chengdu, and Chandu thinks that this afternoon, he's going to take a good look at Chengdu's true strength. Later, at the combat ring, a staff member says that students whose names are called should come up to the stage for the combat duel. He first calls Chengdu and then Feng Rui. Feng Rui starts laughing because this is exactly the kind of moment he's been waiting for. Some of the students nearby start talking. One of them says that although Chengdu just returned to school, his strength score is extremely impressive and wonders whether he can win this time. Another student says that it's impossible and that Feng Rui is definitely going to win. He says that real combat relies on martial skill and that just having high strength isn't a huge advantage. On the stage, as both of them prepare their weapons, Feng Rui says that Chengdu shouldn't think that just because he won against him last time, he'll be that lucky again this round. Chengdu responds that he hopes Feng Rui can still be that arrogant later. They both rush forward as someone shouts that martial arts stop war. As their swords are about to clash with intense aura, Chengdu also prepares and slashes forward. The two of them dodge, jump away, and try to strike repeatedly. Eventually, Chengdu lands a hit. As the fight continues, Chengdu thinks that the one who will enter the Hongji class will definitely be him. At this moment, Feng Rui is completely furious. As he raises his sword, he says that Chengdu's reputation is well deserved. He unleashes multiple sword attacks. Chengdu manages to dodge many of them and counter with several slashes of his own. Then Feng Rui says that now he's going to take Chengdu down, and he launches a finishing attack. However, Chengdu manages to dodge that one as well. As Chengdu steadies himself, he thinks that actual combat with people is a bit different from fighting monsters in the crystal space. Because of that, he realizes he has to use new kinds of tricks, since his opponent is doing the same. Suddenly, the enemy strikes again. Then the enemy charges in again. Chengdu tries to block the attack, but at the same time counterattacks. This time, he gains the upper hand, and the enemy starts coughing. The enemy then tries to sneak in an attack with another dagger. However, Chengdu sees everything clearly. He is already prepared and delivers a final strike straight to the enemy's head. As the enemy falls to the ground, everyone starts cheering. The friend snaps out of his shock and says that the dark horse is actually his brother. Another person shouts, asking what's going on and saying that Chengdu actually won. Someone else yells in disbelief, wondering whether Chengdu secretly took drugs. At that moment, a staff member announces that the medical team should check Feng Rui's condition and tells the students for the next combat duel to get ready. Then he calls out to Chengdu and tells him to wait a moment. Chengdu stops and waits. He bows and says to Teacher Ling that he was anxious just now and didn't control his force very well, so he apologizes. Teacher Ling says that getting injured in a combat duel is normal and tells him to just pay attention next time. He also tells Chengdu that he worked hard today and reminds him to stretch when he gets home. Chengdu thanks the teacher. In his heart, he thinks that Feng Rui was beaten so badly, yet didn't receive a single real injury. He believes it's most likely because of the crushing superiority in martial skill. Teacher Ling then tells Wenkai to call the principal. Later, as Chengdu leaves, he thinks that it's still early and that his dad and little sister won't be back until later. When he arrives at the virtual combat capsule, he thinks that although he can't afford a one-on-one sparring partner, fortunately the school has distributed one of these capsules to every student. He thinks that once he lies inside, he can match with martial artists of similar levels for combat. He recalls that because he's been fighting monsters in the crystal space, he hasn't really used the virtual combat system, so his current rank is only bronze. As he connects the machine, he thinks that Feng Rui lost miserably today and will likely get people to trouble him so he can't enter the Hongji class. As the capsule activates, the combat record from the virtual capsule is automatically recorded on the Blue Star Youth List. This list was established specifically for the college entrance exam and is also known as the Genius List. It is a ranking of martial skill strength recognized by all ecospheres globally. Even within the Hongji class, no one has managed to get onto this list. After sitting inside the capsule, Chengdu thinks that as long as he can achieve a ranking on the Blue Star Youth List, he can definitely earn the opportunity to enter the Hongji class based purely on his strength. Inside the virtual space, he starts moving around and says that ever since he obtained the crystal space, he hasn't used the virtual capsule at all. So he'll start with a warm-up match first. Soon, he puts on a mask and looks around. He says, wondering where the opponent is. At that moment, a voice suddenly says that his reaction is too slow. At the same time, a lady attacks from above. As the lady attacks from above, Chengdu is genuinely surprised. She flips back and lands lightly on the ground, then says that his reaction speed is okay, clearly a bit impressed. She then adds that this isn't a school exam, and that he doesn't need to wait until he sees the opponent clearly and says hello before fighting. Chengdu says that he's learned his lesson, but that he won't give her another chance to sneak attack him. He starts moving his sword, but the lady gracefully dodges every strike and even counters several times, which surprises Chengdu even more. When Chengdu uses Pale Dragon Point Thrust, he still isn't able to gain much advantage. The lady points out that what he just used was clearly Pale Dragon Point Thrust, yet he used a move meant for thrusting like a normal sword slash. She then pushes him back and says that the application of the flowing light form shouldn't be constrained to a specific form, and that he should think more about the martial art itself. Chengdu feels confused and thinks that she's right. He wonders why sword moves must be constrained to form, but then also questions how she could recognize his sword skill so easily. Seeing Chengdu distracted by his thoughts, the lady tells him not to lose focus. Chengdu thinks that she's incredibly strong, and that he can't tell at all what kind of foundational martial art she learned. As she continues completely overwhelming him, he keeps wondering who she actually is. After another exchange, the lady tells him that he was careless. Chengdu, lying on the ground, can only think in disbelief that this sneaky camper really got him. A notification appears, saying that he suffered a loss against little girls selling nuclear bombs, and that his victory points have been reduced by 10. Still on the ground, Chengdu thinks that he clearly could have won with raw power, but she insisted on using sneak attacks. He recalls her words about thinking more about the martial art itself. He then thinks further that the flowing light sword art has a total of 4 forms, and that the only one he hasn't fully mastered yet is Pale Dragon Point Thrust. As a thrusting move, its attribute is closer to that of an assassin. He suddenly realizes that assassins are good at sneak attacks, but his fighting style has always been too frontal. He decides to use actual combat to test whether this line of thought is correct. Soon, he enters another battle. This time, a huge and heavy opponent wielding a weapon appears in front of him. Chengdu thinks that he just met a sneak attacker, and now he's matched against someone with a weapon counter. He wonders what kind of god-tier matchmaking mechanism this is. Even so, he steadies himself, raises his sword, pours out his aura, and rushes forward. He thinks that although the opponent has a weapon advantage, his martial arts level is higher, so the advantage should still be his. As he attacks, he uses painting the ground as a prison, and his slashes connect again and again, followed by golden drums ringing to the heavens, each strike landing heavier than the last. The enemy says that a sword isn't used like that, and tells him not to think that just because his martial arts are a bit stronger, he can do whatever he wants. The enemy swings his weapon, and Chengdu sees it coming straight at him. Chengdu says that so. He then uses breeze in the forest, sending out multiple waves. However, the massive attack still continues charging toward him. At that moment, Chengdu immediately shifts to the enemy's shoulder, preparing his sword for a final slash. The enemy reacts in shock and says that he was clearly in front just now. Chengdu then uses Pale Dragon Point Thrust and finishes the opponent in one clean move. This time, his victory points increase by 10. Afterward, Chengdu thinks that this was his first time successfully unleashing Pale Dragon Point Thrust. He then thinks about why the sword is considered skillful. He realizes that skillful doesn't mean dexterous, but rather ever-changing. Can be hard or soft, hidden or visible, can move like thunder or flow gently like a fine stream. As the final form of the flowing light sword art, Pale Dragon Point Thrust was likely meant to help him understand that the sword can be used openly and honorably, but it can also be used in secret. The sword itself is an undefined weapon. A status notification appears, congratulating the host as flowing light sword art improves from Tier 1, 89% to Tier 1, 90%. Chengdu says that real combat deepens understanding, and that he wants to fight again. Not long after, another notification appears, congratulating him as his flowing light sword art improves again. Chengdu immediately says to fight again. Once more, he wins, and another notification confirms his sword art has improved. He repeats this again and again. After some time passes, Chun-do starts feeling very hungry. Then his watch displays a message congratulating him on entering the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth list. Chun-do says in disbelief that he entered the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth list. He then says to expand all of his Blue Star Youth list details. The notification displays his rankings. Blue Star Youth list rank 6,219, 7th Biosphere Youth list rank 654, Giant Bear Realm Youth list rank 55, Purple Cloud District Youth list rank 7, and Liang City Youth list rank 1. The system responds that the command is understood. Chun-do can hardly believe it. He feels extremely excited as he thinks that he didn't expect that after mastering Pale Dragon Point Thrust, he would actually become number 1 on the Liang City Youth list. He realizes that the spot in the Hongji class is now secured. Later, at Liang City number 1 High School, on a vast open ground, Chun-do is also present. However, a voice suddenly calls out to him and says that he doesn't even know to greet a teacher when he sees one, asking where his manners are. This is Fang Ligua, the dean of students at Liang City number 1 High School and Fang Rui's second uncle. Chun-do greets him and says hello, teacher. However, in his mind, he wonders what that armband is. The annoying teacher then says that this new semester, as the dean of students, he is conducting a uniform inspection of grooming and appearance, and asks Chun-do what he is wearing. Chun-do calmly says that it's the school uniform. Everyone around starts laughing. Suddenly, someone shouts for silence. That person then says that Chun-do is going to be in trouble because Fang Rui still hasn't been discharged from the hospital, and his second uncle is definitely going to take revenge. Another voice says that they heard Chun-do only won because he drank banned drugs, and that he deserves it. Someone else says that they really thought Chun-do was that formidable. The annoying teacher starts waving his stick around, pointing here and there, and saying that everything he's pointing at is non-compliant. Chun-do responds that all of these comply with school regulations, and says that he doesn't know where the non-compliance lies. The teacher snaps back and says that Chun-do still dares to talk back. As he's about to strike, Chun-do grabs the stick. The teacher explodes in anger and says that Chun-do is disobeying discipline and contradicting a teacher, and threatens to report him to the principal and have him expelled. At that moment, another voice calmly asks who is looking for him. The newcomer is Li Mu, the principal of Liang City number 1 High School. Standing beside him is Wang Enquin, the mayor of Liang City. Seeing the principal arrive, the annoying teacher immediately rushes over and says that it's Chun-do causing trouble. The principal hurriedly gestures for him to stop talking. He then looks at Chun-do and asks if he is Chun-do. Chun-do answers that yes, he is Chun-do. The principal then says that they specifically came to see him and introduces the man beside him as Mayor Wang. Mayor Wang smiles and says that Chun-do became number 1 on the Liang City Youth list and even entered the top 1 in 10,000 on the Blue Star Youth list, so he definitely had to come see what kind of remarkable figure Chun-do is. The annoying teacher freezes in disbelief and asks what he just heard, questioning whether Chun-do really entered the top 1 in 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth list. The students behind them are just as stunned, staring in shock as the scene unfolds. As everyone stands there in shock, students around start whispering excitedly. One of them says that Chun-do is actually this awesome. Another says that with this kind of strength, he definitely didn't need to take any medicine to beat Fang Rui. Someone else says that Brother Du is way too powerful and that he's definitely going to the Hongji class. Then the principal tells Chun-do to come with them to the meeting room first, saying that there are some things they want to talk to him about. After hearing this, Chun-do follows them and replies that yes, principal. As they walk away, the principal tells him that after they finish chatting, he should go directly to report to the Hongji class teacher. He adds that Teacher Ling insisted yesterday that Chun-do must be transferred to the Hongji class. Inside the meeting room, a few people are already present. Some of them greet the mayor and the principal respectfully. One of the people there is Lu Bo, a senior from Liang City number 2 High School and currently ranked 2nd on the Liang City Youth list. Another is Mo, the number 1 student of the Hongji class at Liang City number 1 High School. They don't know each other, but when their eyes meet, they both think the same thing, that they don't recognize the other. Once everyone settles down, the mayor gets straight to the point. He says that the 100 cities under the jurisdiction of the Purple Cloud District are preparing to hold a competition for high school seniors. He explains that Liang City will send the top 3 students ranked by martial arts skills, with the rankings based on the data as of 6 p.m. last night. He says that led by martial artists above level 15, they will participate in a 3-day event called the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. He adds that the location will be High City number 1 High School. He continues by saying that the final top 10 of this tournament will receive varying amounts of bonus points for the college entrance exam, along with cash prizes starting at a minimum of 10 bonus points and 100,000 yuan. After explaining all this, the mayor asks whether they are willing to participate. One of the students then asks the mayor why, since the competition is based on martial arts rankings, it doesn't use the virtual combat format. The mayor explains that compared to virtual combat, the district leaders unanimously believe real combat is more effective. He says there will be martial artists responsible for safety at the venue, and that during the match, everyone will wear special suits and fight using the same standardized life intensity. As Chun-Do listens, he thinks that with his current martial arts level, he should already be at least within the top 20 of the Purple Cloud District. He also thinks that with his daily improvement speed, breaking into the top 3 shouldn't be a problem at all. The mayor then adds that even if they don't make the top 10, they can still use this opportunity to understand the level of their peers, and tells them not to put too much psychological pressure on themselves. Chun-Do hesitates briefly, then says that he will participate. The other two also say that they will participate as well. The mayor nods and says that this is good, and that truly heroes come from the youth. He says they will notify them in advance once the departure time is confirmed, and tells them to go back to class for now. As Chun-Do leaves, he thinks that if he can make it into the top 3 of the 100 Cities War, his mom and dad won't have to work themselves to death from dawn to dusk every day. He tells himself that he must get into the top 3 of this 100 Cities War. When he enters the Hongji class, he notices that the desks and chairs don't have student names marked on them like in his previous class. He looks around and says that he'll just sit anywhere for now. Before he can sit down, a voice suddenly shouts at him to get lost. The person demands to know who Chun-Do thinks he is, and whether he's even worthy of sitting there. This person is Fang Hu, ranked 10th in the Hongji class. After taking a look at him, Chun-Do can't help but think whether there's a bear sitting in the classroom. As the guy walks closer, Chun-Do stands up and thinks that it's already this era, yet people are still trying to pull school bullying nonsense. At that moment, another student walks over and says that it's Fang Hu, and reminds him that Chun-Do is here for the first time and isn't clear on the Hongji class rules yet. Chun-Do is slightly surprised and thinks that this guy actually approached him silently, and that his life intensity exceeds Chun-Do's by at least 2 levels. Fang Hu snorts and says that Chun-Do should count himself lucky, and that for Mo-Rat's sake, he'll let him off this time. Mo-Rat then explains that since it's Chun-Do's first time in the Hongji class, he might not know that the strength hierarchy in the Hongji class is determined by seat number. He explains that the monthly seat ranking battle uses real combat to decide the order, and that students ranked in the bottom 10 must stand during class for the following month. Hearing this, Chun-Do thinks that he didn't expect the competitive pressure in the Hongji class to be this intense. Mo-Rat then adds that since it's the beginning of the month, this month's seat ranking has already been set. However, in a moment, Chun-Do will compete for a seat number in the form of a challenge. Chun-Do listens carefully and then asks whether, aside from being able to sit during class, there are any other differences in treatment based on the seat ranking. He thinks that, after all, this question determines how much of his strength he should use in a moment. Mo-Rat then says that, of course, the higher the seat ranking, the better, because it determines the resource subsidy for the month. Chun-Do thinks that, in that case, it's definitely worth a try. Since there are resources involved, he tells himself that he must get a seat number with as high a ranking as possible. Soon, a staff member outside the combat room announces that class is starting and tells everyone to go directly to the combat room next door. Inside the combat room, the staff teacher explains that the challenger can issue up to 3 challenges, and that a corresponding seat number will be assigned based on performance in real combat. Chun-Do then says that he wants to challenge number 10. As Chun-Do prepares his sword and steps forward, the staff member looks a bit nervous. The other students also begin discussing among themselves. One of them says that he's actually challenging a top 10 position right from the start. Another says that Chun-Do looks honest and meek, and wonders whether his personality is actually this arrogant. The staff member thinks to himself that even if this kid has outstanding martial arts skills, his life intensity is still far behind most students in the Hongji class, and that alone is not enough to challenge the top 10. He also thinks that the resource subsidy for 10th place is 50% higher than that of 11th place. Meanwhile, Chun-Do keeps thinking that just for this reason alone, it's worth trying. The burly student laughs loudly and says that Chun-Do just arrived in the Hongji class and is already talking big, warning him not to end up crying after getting beaten later. Chun-Do calmly asks whether he is the 10th place. The burly student replies that's right and tells Chun-Do to consider himself unlucky. At that moment, the staff member instructs Pang Hu to put on his protective gear and enter the arena. As this happens, The staff member thinks to himself that he originally thought Chindu was a steady person, but didn't expect him to be so eager to prove himself. Still, he believes this is fine, and that letting him taste some bitterness can be considered a form of tempering. The burly student finishes preparing his weapon, and Chindu also gets ready. Soon after, the announcement is made for the battle to begin. The burly guy says that Chindu should get ready and tells him to just wait to hug his thigh, cry, and beg for mercy. He's extremely excited about this battle and feels like he can easily win, crushing Chindu and showing him just how useless and pathetic he is. Chindu also releases his aura and prepares calmly. In his heart, he thinks that they'll see about that. As the burly opponent's weapon swings toward Chindu's head, the opponent says that his reaction is too slow, fully confident that the hit will land. The audience immediately grows nervous. One person says that the speed difference is obvious, and that Chindu's life intensity is a full level lower than Pang Hu's, so it's over and GG next game. Another person adds that even a gap of 0.1 in life intensity can determine victory, let alone a full level, and says Chindu is definitely going to lose. The staff member, however, notices something strange and mutters that Chindu's life intensity is at level 5.2. He remembers that Chindu was only at 5.1 yesterday and thinks that only one day has passed, so how did he reach 5.2 so quickly? The burly opponent starts laughing loudly and says that Chindu has lost, but the moment he swings his weapon down, his expression changes in shock. He suddenly realizes that Chindu is already beneath him. In the next instant, Chindu unleashes a fierce slash infused with powerful aura, sending the burly man flying straight out of the arena and crashing heavily to the ground. It is Pale Dragon Point Thrust. The staff member immediately announces that Chindu's martial skill has reached Tier 1 Perfect. Chindu replies that he just got lucky and broke through last night. However, in the staff member's heart, he thinks that this kind of luck is unbelievable, since breaking through to 90% overnight is simply shocking. Chindu then starts to speak, calling out to the teacher, but before he can say anything, the teacher announces that the winner is Chindu. The crowd instantly erupts into discussion. One person says that Chindu actually won, even with a full level gap. Another shouts that it's too awesome, and that he won with a single strike. Nearby, Mo Rat watches silently and thinks to himself that he didn't expect Chindu to truly be a late-blooming genius. The teacher then asks Chindu whether, now that he has obtained seat number 10, he still wants to continue challenging. Chindu replies that he doesn't. In his mind, he thinks that even if he advances a few more ranks, the resource subsidy won't change much, so it's better to conserve his strength for now. Moret then walks over and says to Chindu that they should add each other on WeChat, since they're classmates now and it'll be easier to contact each other later. Another person quickly chimes in and says that he wants to add Chindu as well. Someone else immediately follows, saying the same thing. Feeling a bit nervous, Chindu simply says that sure, that's fine. The burly guy then walks over, lowers his attitude, and says that Chindu should be the bigger person and forgive him, asking him not to take what he said earlier to heart. Chindu looks at him and thinks that this guy really knows when to bow his head and when to act tough. From a distance, the teacher observes this scene for a moment, then calls out and tells Chindu to come to his office after school. Later, at the office, a staff member opens the door and asks Chindu to come in. After Chindu enters, the teacher brings up the topic of Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Thai Martial Arts University within their ecosystem, and asks whether there are still slots available for early special admission. The staff member tells him to sit down first and asks why he's suddenly asking about this. The teacher explains that he wants Chindu to try and see whether he can take the path of early special admission. The staff member then explains that both Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Thai Martial Arts University are among the top 8 famous schools. He says that their minimum requirement is that martial skill must reach Tier 1 Perfect. He also reminds him not to underestimate that last 1%, explaining that even though Chindu is only 1% away, that gap is extremely difficult to cross. The teacher responds that talking is useless and asks whether the principal doesn't have an instrument there to test student martial skills. He suggests letting Chindu try directly. The principal sighs and says that Ling Yun is really stubborn. Then he points toward the testing instrument and explains that it's over there. He adds that the instrument's maximum limit is Tier 1 High Stage, which is just right for testing students. Teacher Ling then tells Chindu to recreate the attack he used during the seat ranking battle, and instructs him to do it at the designated position in front of the instrument. Chindu steps forward, steadies himself, prepares his sword, and releases his aura. He then executes Pale Dragon Point Thrust. The principal immediately exclaims in shock, saying that he didn't expect this at all. He says that Chindu was still at Tier 1 High Stage yesterday afternoon, but broke through last night and has already reached Tier 1 Perfect. Seeing the damaged instrument, Chindu quickly apologizes apologizes to the principal and says that he's sorry and that he didn't expect the instrument to break. The teacher says to the principal that Chun-do is absolutely a combat genius. He says that this kind of combat instinct, one that seems born for victory, is rare and precious. He honestly adds that in all his years of teaching, this is the first time he's encountered a student who gives him such a seasoned feeling during combat, as if the student has experienced countless life and death struggles. Hearing this, Chun-do thinks to himself that the teacher's intuition is really sharp. The principal can't help but exclaim that Chun-do is a genius, an absolute martial arts genius. He says Chun-do must be prioritized for grooming and decides to temporarily set his training resources to the level of seat number 1. He says he will personally go communicate about the early special admission. As for the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament, he tells Chun-do that he must strive to get into the top 3 because that would practically guarantee everything. Chun-do then asks what early special admission actually is. The teacher explains that to enter one of the top 8 famous schools through the normal college entrance exam, a student's life intensity must reach at least level 6.5. With Chun-do's current life intensity, meeting that standard before the exam would be extremely difficult. However, if he takes the special admission path, he only needs his martial skill to reach Tier 1 perfect 1 month before the college entrance exam. The principal adds that at that time, teachers from Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Thai Martial Arts University will come to the school specifically to assess Chun-do after the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. Chun-do then asks whether, if he passes the early special admission for those 2 schools, he can still participate in the college entrance exam normally and apply to other martial arts universities. The teacher asks if there is a martial arts university he prefers. Chun-do answers that if possible, he wants to go to Mount Wang Martial Arts University. The teacher is a bit surprised and wonders why, saying that the resources provided by the top 8 famous schools are more or less the same. Chun-do doesn't say anything further and keeps his reason to himself. 60 years ago, the Cloud Thunder District in Lake West City was attacked by the giant race. Although the city's defense corps and those of surrounding cities arrived in time, manpower was limited, and the incident still resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. Chun-do hopes that his family can always remain safe and peaceful. Because of this, he wants to go to Mount Wang, hoping that if any danger strikes, he can return as quickly as possible. Hearing his choice, the teacher thinks to himself that this is actually the reason. He believes that people who think like this are usually those who have experienced the destruction of their families. For someone this young, who still has a complete family, to already possess this kind of awareness truly shows someone capable of shouldering great responsibility. Chun-do then says that he wants to treat these 2 schools as a safety net and asks whether, if he can't get into Mount Wang Martial Arts University, he could go to these 2 instead. The principal replies that unfortunately he can't. He explains that after passing early special admission, Chun-do would need to sign a contract binding him to that school. The teacher adds that if Chun-do achieves a good ranking in the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament next month, admission to those 2 schools will be practically guaranteed. He says that he has already calculated it for him. With early special admission, the score requirement can be lowered by another 100 points. If Chun-do doesn't take the early special admission route, not only would his life intensity need to reach 6.5, but the college entrance exam score would only be lowered by a maximum of 30 points. From experience, he advises Chun-do not to underestimate his future. Chun-do thanks the teacher and the principal and says that he will consider it carefully. Later, as he walks out of the school gate, Chun-do thinks that the time for early special admission is after the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament, which is still more than a month away. He decides that from now until the college entrance exam, he will stay in the exclusive martial arts room assigned to him and focus entirely on improving his strength. During this time, he also plans to see whether he can use medicine to accelerate his life intensity. He thinks that what he wants must be there, because it belongs to the Technology Martial Palace. He recalls that there are 3 pinnacle forces in the entire high martial cultivation civilization. One is the Extreme Martial Palace, which confronts alien civilizations. Another is the Technology Martial Palace, which maintains public order among humans. The third is the Martial Artist Alliance, which works to protect humanity's future. He also remembers that the owner of the Technology Martial Palace is Durags, who is known as the second strongest in the civilization. Although his strength strength is inferior to Yan's, no one can ignore the massive contributions he has made to humanity's overall development. Soon after, a lady greets him politely and says that she is happy to serve him. Chun-Du responds and says hello, then states that he would like to buy 3 boxes of Thunder Key blood pills. The lady looks slightly surprised and explains that Thunder Key blood pills cannot be purchased directly and that an endurance test is required. She then asks him to follow her. Chun-Du understands that Thunder Key blood pills are among the best medicines ordinary people can buy before officially becoming martial artists, but they come with certain risks. Once consumed, the medicinal effects transform into thunder energy that rushes through the body's meridians. If the user cannot maintain a high level of mental concentration within 30 minutes, the thunder can become chaotic and extremely dangerous. The lady then tells him to please come in. Chun-Du thinks that this is exactly why endurance tests are required when purchasing this kind of product to prevent accidents. The staff member asks Chun-Du whether he has any other questions and says that if not, he will press the start button. Chun-Du replies that he is ready. Once the button is pressed, the machine starts running. The lady nearby moves slightly, feeling a bit of residual shock from the test. As Chun-Du leaves, he overhears someone making a call and saying hello to the technical department, reporting that the endurance test machine for the Thunder Key blood pill seems to be broken. Later, inside his exclusive martial arts room at the school, Chun-Du checks the pill instructions. The status shows that 1 pill per day for 10 consecutive days counts as 1 cycle. A maximum of 3 pills can be taken per day, and they can be taken at the same time. It also notes that if 3 pills are taken at once, the pain level will be 5 times that of a single pill. Regardless of whether 1, 2, or 3 pills are taken at a time, the effect duration remains 30 minutes. After 3 to 5 cycles, antibodies will begin to form and the effectiveness will gradually weaken. After reading this, Chun-Du thinks that the pain level of the endurance test at the store earlier was only 50% of a single pill, which was basically nothing to him. He reasons that even if he takes 3 pills at once and the pain is 10 times stronger than the store test, it should still be manageable. With that thought, he takes all 3 pills together. Almost immediately, a violent surge of electricity rushes through his entire body. Even so, he clenches his teeth and thinks that this is nothing he can't handle. Then a notification appears, congratulating him as his life intensity increases from level 5.2 to level 5.3. Seeing this, Chun-Du feels excited and thinks that this is great and that he's now 1 step closer to level 6.5. He tells himself that as long as the growth speed of his life intensity continues to increase, he will completely refuse the path of early special admission. Chun-Du thinks that he originally planned to take the medicine for a full month, but now it looks like he can only take it for 10 days. After calculating the balance on his card, he realizes it can only support him for 55 days. Thinking it through, he knows that sooner or later, he will have to fight his way into at least the top 2 of the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament so he can get enough money to continue developing. Soon after, his body gives out and he collapses onto the ground. He thinks that he didn't expect the side effects of using the Thunder Key pill for the first time to be this intense. He realizes that his body is temporarily unable to move because of the thunder power rampaging inside him. He tells himself that if his body is exhausted, then he'll improve his mental power instead and decides to enter the crystal space. After some time passes, he wakes up and thinks that he slaughtered green firefly giants in the crystal space all night. Although he didn't completely defeat them this time, his mental power improved significantly. As he recalls the battle and his swift movements, he also realizes that the school's resource subsidy has already arrived. Feeling energized, he thinks that he can't wait to go to class. Later, inside the Hongji class, the mental power teacher and martial artist alliance member, Yadi, begins the lesson. She says that today they will learn in advance about a combat method for martial artists known as mental power attachment. Chun-Du thinks that the mental power class is something unique to the Hongji class and that only students who possess at least tier 2 mental power are qualified to learn it. He also notices that the teacher in charge has a life intensity exceeding level 15. The teacher continues, explaining that the higher the level of martial arts skill, the greater the development of physical strength. However, if mental power is mastered properly, it can achieve twice the result with half the effort. She explains that the physical strength triggered by martial arts skills is usually dispersed throughout the body, whereas mental power allows all that strength to be concentrated at a single point, greatly improving explosive power. She says that the ability to make every strand of strength in the entire body play its role is what mental power attachment is all about. Looking around, Chun-Du thinks that everyone seems unsurprised and assumes that they probably learned and mastered mental power attachment in advance. The teacher then reminds everyone that before mental power reaches tier 10, the amount of physical strength that mental power attachment can mobilize is extremely limited. She says she does not recommend spending too much time researching it. In order to score high on the college entrance exam, she advises that the main focus should still be on improving life intensity for now. She then announces that she will test everyone's mental power and tells all students to stand up. As she begins preparing a strange technique, everyone stands. She explains that in a moment, she will use a short flute to play the Song of Exhaustion to accurately detect how much mental power each student has. She says she hopes everyone's results will be better than last semester. She then turns to Chindu and says that he can choose whether or not to participate and that this will not affect his college entrance exam score. Chindu feels a bit nervous and thinks that the teacher probably assumes he only has tier 1 mental power and that he will collapse as soon as the flute starts playing, embarrassing himself in front of everyone. Even so, Chun-do speaks up and says that he wants to participate. The teacher agrees, but in her heart she thinks that young people are always competitive, and that mental power is not something simple. She believes that even the other Hongji class students are rather clumsy in this area. Still, because Chun-do is a student Ling Yun pays special attention to, she decides that if he struggles later, she will keep him behind and comfort him privately. She then raises the flute and begins playing, telling everyone to focus their attention and resist with all their strength. She explains that her Song of Exhaustion will make both their bodies and minds feel exhausted at the same time. Everyone braces themselves. Chun-do, Emo-rat, and the rest of the class all feel confident as the test begins. But will Chandu fail or not? To find out, subscribe right now and turn on all the notifications.